Hey friends, it's Becky here and welcome back to my channel and welcome back to a new video. I am super excited about filming today's video because now I am finally doing my Victober and October wrap-up, which is something I wanted to do last week already, but I was still reading one Victorian book until this morning actually, and I wanted to finish all the books so I can conclude them in one video. So without further ado, I will just start because October for me was absolutely incredible month when I read so many books and I loved all of them. So I cannot wait to tell you about it. So without further ado, I will just start, and the first book I will tell you about is this one, which I finished as I mentioned this morning, and it's called Woman in White. You see? Yes. This book was absolutely incredible and I absolutely loved it. Funnily enough, I thought for the longest time that Wilkie Collins is a woman. Don't know why, don't know how, but I just assume it's a woman, and then I opened this book and there was the portrait of a man with a long beard and I'm like, right, so not a woman. I absolutely love this. This was my third time starting to read this book actually, because for the first time I read it in August last year and I had it as audiobook, but for some reason I was struggling to get into the story a little bit, so after a few minutes, okay, I'll be honest, after a few minutes I decided to put it aside, and then I started with this October at the very beginning, but I feel that I was reading so many books at the time that I just was not able to focus on this story, and again I put it aside for a while, but then I was like, you know what, you're gonna love this book because it was so anticipated and so many people say about how much they love this book, so I really wanted to give it another chance, and that's what I did, and I read this book as a one book only. I was not reading anything else while reading this one, and it was so worthy. This is absolutely incredible story, absolutely incredible narration, and the writing style. I definitely want to read more by this author because I never read anything previously by him, and it's a story of love, romance, mystery, drama, and it's oh my gosh. What I also love about this story is the characters. I loved every single one of them, despite maybe some of them being a villain, but they were written so perfectly that I just could not put the book down from the beginning until the last page. The writing style, as you can see here, I have so many things highlighted and underlined. To be honest with you, I do not read romances. I feel like contemporary fiction or contemporary romances are not really my type of thing. However, I absolutely love reading romance and love stories in these kind of books because I don't know, there's just something about the way the times were and the way it's written in those books, whether it's like Victorian novels or Jane Austen books and every single book like this, because I feel like especially in these days, there are so many pages which are describing even, let's say, I don't know, explicit sex scenes, and I'm like, okay, fair enough, but in the same time, it's not that great sometimes, or it does not really give you so much. I don't know, there is something about this type of writing when you have two characters which are so obviously in love with each other, but because of the times they used to live in, they cannot really pursue it immediately, so there is this whole building towards the relationship, and then finally the breaking point comes and they, let's say, touch hands, and it's just so satisfying. So I don't know if I'm the only one, but it was also the case in this book, and especially the way how author was describing a woman from the point of view of a character who is in love with her. That was so wonderful, like my heart was just so happy. It was absolutely incredible. And also the characters, as I mentioned here, especially the character of Marianne, definitely one of my favorite characters in literature in general. Absolutely love this. What I also enjoyed so much is the fact that from the very beginning the book reminded me or gave me the vibes of Jane Eyre combined with Three Musketeers, so you can imagine the fireworks inside of me how much I love this, because Jane Eyre is one of my favorite books, and Three Musketeers, no need comments. Honestly, it doesn't need any comment. If you read this book, please let me know what you thought in the comments. If you have recommendations for your other favorite book by this author, let me know in the comments, because definitely I want to read this as soon as possible because I love this so much. The second book I would love to talk to you about, but maybe very briefly, because I already made one video in which I was talking about this book, Frankenstein, and also the picture of Dorian Gray. It was a reading vlog which I published a couple weeks ago, and I will link it to the description down below, and in there I was describing my whole process whilst I was reading these two books, and also my whole conclusion about how I felt after finishing those books. So very briefly about Frankenstein, hope you see it. Frankenstein is a story which I read for the first time now. I had very little knowledge about the story or the characters. I only knew there is some character of Victor Frankenstein and then the creature, the monster, and to be honest with you, for the longest time I assumed that the Frankenstein is actually the name of the monster, so that's how little I knew about the story. And until this day I just cannot get over the fact that this story came out from such a young woman, such a young author, and especially written in the times it was written, because I feel like it's a book which is very much ahead of its own time. I love the characters, although I must say that right now I feel a little bit differently about some characters as I felt right after finishing the book. For example, the Victor Frankenstein himself, right now he comes to me much more selfish person than how I felt about him to be right after I finished the book. But I love the whole setting, I love the writing style. It was very much gripping from the beginning for me. I could not put the book down, and for me it was also spooky. I do not read horror stories, so don't judge me. For me this was spooky. I know that if there are people who read horror stories on the regular basis, this is nothing for you. For me it was a lot. One question I raised during reading this story, and I also mentioned it in the previous video, but I'm gonna say now, if you have any more information about the character of Igor, which is so much portrayed in, for example, different film adaptation regarding Frankenstein story, please let me know what you know of him and how did he even appear in those, because there is no such character as Igor in this book. And I finished this one and I'm like, what the heck is with Igor? Like, he's not here in the original story. So if you know anything about this, please let me know. And yeah, very much interesting experience. Definitely one of the books I will be rereading at some point, maybe even next Victober, and I'm very much curious to see how I'm gonna feel about the characters maybe after I reread it again. So wonderful. There were so many parts which made me really gasp, and I was not expecting them and did not see them coming, and then when they happened I was just so sad and so excited about the whole reading experience that it was truly incredible. If you haven't read Frankenstein yet, please do so. So the third book I finished for Victober is called The Picture of Dorian Gray, which was very much anticipated for me because I wanted to read it for last Victober as well, but I did not have time, and then I decided to read this because, as I mentioned in my previous videos, one of the bookish quizzes I took resulted for me as this is the book which should match my personality. I did not agree with this, and I still do not agree with this. I have no clue how it was the result of the quiz, but anyway, this is a book which again I read so fast and so quickly. I don't remember being immersed in story so much and reading the book so intensively. I was reading it if I was eating or just before I went to sleep, when I woke up, just any time I had the chance. It's a story of a young man who at the very beginning of the book has his portrait done, and through this one character called Lord Henry, who is very much praising his beauty, Dorian Gray himself starts to realize how beautiful he is, and he make a wish that he would never grow old. And I'm not gonna tell you much about this story, but it's just truly gripping from the very beginning. I did enjoy all the characters. For example, the Lord Henry, at the very beginning I did enjoy him very much because I felt like he is a very wise man and he knows a lot and he is funny. But then the more I was getting to know him, the more I realized his opinion about women and marriage, for example, and I realized, you know what, I just don't like you anymore. But again, I take the point that in the times it was written and the times he was living in, probably that was the majority of the opinions men used to have on women, but still I don't like him. So it was very interesting experience. Also, there were so many points in which I did not see coming and really surprised me, and I was like, oh my gosh. It was truly great book. If you haven't read The Picture of Dorian Gray yet, I also recommend it highly, same as with the Frankenstein. Truly wonderful experience, and yeah, read it. One of the Victober reads I had as well is the Selected Poems of Matthew Arnold, which is a short book, and this for me was interesting experience. I was reading this book in between my other reads because obviously there are poems, and to be honest with you, I don't think this is a collection of poetry which I would read anytime soon again, also for the reason that this is English, it's poetry and it's Victorian English, so I came across a couple words which I have never heard before, and I don't think I will ever read them again anywhere or find them anywhere, and I must say that this was a little bit standing in a way of my enjoyment of the book completely, because obviously the slightly language barrier, but it wasn't that bad, but still it's not something I'm used to. even though I now read majority of the books in English. But it was very interesting one. I found a couple of my favorite poems here. Those are different, as I mentioned, selected poems, so you can find there like narrative poems and lyrical poems and sonnets. So if you read this by any chance and you maybe have your favorite poem, please let me know in the comments, because it's truly lovely book. It's quite thin one, and as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, I think it was Victober TBR, there are a couple of very lovely illustrations like this, which I like very much. So it was truly lovely experience. Right, my friends, and those were my books which I read for Victober. So unfortunately I was not able to read the group read book, which was The Mayor of the Castor Bridge. However, I would still love to read it at some point, maybe next Victober, but maybe even during this year still, because I have 2 months. And I did enjoy Victober reads so much. As you can see, they were incredible. Please let me know in the comments if you participated in Victober, what was your most favorite book you read during this readathon, because it was absolutely incredible for me and I cannot wait to hear your answers. And now I would love to mention to you a couple more books which I read in October out of the Victober TBR, and I will start with this one, which is called Circe. I am probably one of the people who has very unpopular opinion on this book, because I know so many people love this book. I did not. For me, Circe is maybe 3-star reads. To be honest with you, I did enjoy this, but it was just way too much for me, because I did not read anything from Greek mythology before very much. This is the first book from all of these retellings which now came out very much and people has been loving them. I never read any retellings like this before, so I was not very familiar with the whole concept of Greek mythology. I only read the short stories back in primary school about the Greek myth. However, those books were written with the purpose to be read by children, so they were adjusted accordingly. And then I came across this book and suddenly there was way too much of toxicity and dysfunctional families and gods eating their children and having sex with different creatures, and I'm like, okay, this is too much. So it was truly fun experience, because my flatmate was very much laughing about my expressions and all the sounds which were coming out of me, like what the heck. So the premise of this book is that we meet Circe, who is a daughter of Helios, but she is not very special comparing to her other siblings. However, during the story she realizes that she does have certain powers such as witchcraft, and for this reason, but also for some other reasons, she is banished to this deserted island, and from there we follow her story and all the experiences she's been through, and we see her fighting and protecting the people she loves in her life and also herself. And it's truly interesting, and I would say that this gives you a good overview of one of the most famous, I would say, like the gods in Greek mythology and the basics maybe, because I'm pretty sure that there is so much more and so many more gods in the whole Greek mythology universe, like Marvel universe, than what I would even know. But I think that in this book you get to know the most famous one, and they are somehow connected to the story of the Circe. So it was very interesting for me. I would like to read more from Greek mythology and get to know it a little bit better, but I think that I will start with the short stories I have back home for children. And after I'm more familiar with this and know what to expect better, then I will move to other books by this author or whoever else. So please let me know in the comments if you read this book, what was your opinion, if you did love it as the rest of the world apparently, or if you're like me and then Greek mythology is sometimes like wow for you. So let me know in the comments. And then one last book which I would like to mention to you, which I read and finished very recently, was an audiobook which was called I'm Glad My Mom Died by Janet McCurdy. And I had this book as audiobook, as I just mentioned, which was very good because it was narrated by author herself and it was done very well. I came across this book by accident because my friend owned this book and then she lent it to me, so I was listening to it, and it was some experience because at the very beginning I knew nothing about the story except the title, which was obviously very much like gripping, you can say, and you were curious about what is happening and why those are such a strong words chosen for the title. And to be honest with you, I do feel a lot of sympathy for the character. So basic premise of this story is that at the very beginning we meet Janet, and this is also memoir, is non-fiction, so it's written by the author about her own experience of being raised as a young child, of which mother always wanted to be actress, but this dream was unfulfilled and she sort of like transferred this dream on her growing daughter. So since the very young age, I believe it was maybe 6 years old, she was studying in different American TV shows. I never heard of any of those before. I never watched them. I did not even know her, but I did enjoy this book, and I can say that she really loves writing much more than she probably loved acting. And this whole I would say pressure which was created by the mother on the young child basically developed into a lot of struggles and addiction and mental illness and eating disorders, because Janet was not happy with this destiny of hers, her mother chosen for her since the very beginning. However, she always tries to please her mother, because there is another part of the story about her mother being ill with cancer. So obviously it's not very easy position to be in, and I found it very interesting, and I would say that it shares a very strong message about how dangerous it can be once parents try to pursue their dreams through their children and did not really take an accountability whether, you know, the children or the child is actually enjoying it, and whether it's okay for a child, and just really blindly following, oh, I had this dream and now my daughter can, you know, make it come true through her, how unhealthy it might be. And also kind of portraying the different companies across the US, and how they are affecting children whilst working with them as with young actors. So it was a very interesting experience for me, and especially I know that when I read some comments, I realized that there are so many books who on one hand sympathize with the author and can also like justify the title or what you can say, and then there is other group of people who are still very much like, oh, those were like strong words to choose and this is not right to speak about your parent like this. And obviously on one hand I kind of understand this point of view, but in the same time I truly understand being raised in the toxic and dysfunctional family and environment like this, how it must affect Janet. And because for me personally, I never really struggled with anything like this. I never luckily been through any eating disorders or anything like this. However, I feel that so many young girls and women, not to generalize, but I feel like it's mostly about girls, like we so often grow up hearing so many different comments on our bodies or what we eat and how we eat and how much we eat. And I personally experienced this as well, and it led me to having not the greatest thoughts on my own body image, for example. And as I mentioned, it never got anywhere near closer to being, you know, a serious in any way, like any eating disorder or anything like this, but it did affected me to a certain level. And I feel like the people who did this comment, they had no clue what kind of effect it might be, and I know that they did not mean it. However, it did affected me to a certain level, and I feel like it was so much more escalated in this story of Janet, and obviously her mom as well. She did not consider this to be, you know, a bad thing, because she was doing only what she wanted for her kids, and she really believed that it's the best for her and that she will be happy with this lifestyle and that's what she wants. So I truly understand the hard position Janet was in, and for me it was very touching experience. And even when it comes to writing style, for example, as I said, it was written very well to certain like details she described, and it really makes you feel like you understand her position. And also I would say that what I really like about this book is the fact that despite being a heavy topic and heavy, you know, difficult situation, she still managed to put certain humor in it, which always cheers you up a little bit, and it was very lovely. So if you read this book, please let me know in the comments what you think of it, because I would very much love to know. Right, my friends, and with this I would like to close this little wrap-up video. I hope you enjoyed this. Please let me know what was your favorite book from your Victober reads and what was your favorite book from October reads, or if you read any of these books and you have any thoughts and comments on those, because I would very much love to hear them. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribe, because I would be really lovely to have you here, and I will see you with another video very soon. Take care, bye bye.